Yeah, welcome to our UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio-Marathon. Today is 11th of February 2017. I'm Detlev of Wake News Radio, Wake News TV here from Switzerland, and I have the privilege to start the English speaking part of the UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio-Marathon because we're operating according to time zones. So welcome to our show, and if you want to learn more about us, visit our website, UNITEDWESTRIKE.com. You'll also find a chat room if you want to participate, or during our English speaking part here from Switzerland, you can send me an email by writing to radio@wakenews.net. Yes, well, this is what we are doing here right away. We are trying to wake up people all around the world. And as a UNITEDWESTRIKE team, we are operating since many, many years and having our radio marathons in the meantime every second Saturday of a month. After my show, you will learn more about all the other participants and guests and hosts right after this, on top of the hour. We will switch over to the US to meet our friends over there. Well, today we want to discuss a very important issue, obviously, the failing states. That's how I called it, because we are currently experiencing in Europe, US, and other states a decadent deterioration of state power. Yeah. A negative anarchy development is taking place. Anarchy as such isn't a bad thing. Why do we need government? Huh? We need a certain administration who serves us, but do we need a government which governs us and tells us what to do? But the anarchy which we are experiencing currently is negative. It is destructive. And even China is now travel warning to its citizens not to walk alone at night through German cities and streets. Imagine. There are even no-go areas all over Europe and other areas, and even in the US you will find this. Migrants are still flooding into Europe and the US, even though in the US Trump tried to stop this. He was overruled by the system, and so there seems to be no halt to it. At least it is, as we all know, a long-term plan behind all of this. A vicious plan to destroy our way of living, our societies. Atrocities, plunder and pillage, rape and murder is to be expected soon. Yeah, nothing new though, as this has always been the way of tyrants to get their will. Yeah, and this time the Bankster family's new world order out of chaos. Yeah, we want to discuss this and these issues and actual views to the situation we are in and what we have to expect with my guest, Michael. Michael is also here from Switzerland, and He's a host in our Wake News Radio and Wake News TV program, and he has his own program in the German part called War da was there something, and if I translate this into English, and yeah, we'll see whether he's tuned in already. Michael, are you there?
Yes, Detlev, can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful. So welcome to the show.
Yes, and nice to be with you.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for your contribution in German in the program, and also here in UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio-Marathon. You've been a frequent guest here in recent shows, so welcome back. And you always give us a little perspective from the from a view from above, because everything is linked also to the spiritual world, and this is something which many people don't think of or forget when they talk about all the mishappenings, all the stuff which happens in the world. So, Michael, what is your opinion about this subject? I mean, how would you describe it? I mean, the tyrants are taking over. It looks like they are taking off their mask. Is that something which you could also confirm? Or?
Yes, well, yes. Before I go into that, I'd like to make a point that without the transcendental connection, we'll be completely lost, because these people, these I call them shadow government or tenebristi, from tenebrae, from Latin means darkness, which means the concept tenebrae in Latin means darkness. And without having that transcendental perspective, and without the knowledge that there is beings behind, and some human beings, they play a role in being incantated with these forces, the whole thing doesn't make any sense, and we're completely lost, in the same way as Don Quixote is fighting the windmills. If we only look from these this whole issues of the cabal from a materialistic point of view, we'll lose. We are prone to lose. That is for sure. We don't have a chance. So it's very important that we know of this transcendental background to know what's going on. And I wanted to mention the triumvirate of the Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, which is written, his major works was Walden, and he wrote a book called Civil Disobedience. So it would be worthwhile to take a look into it. So that is Henry David Thoreau, Civil Disobedience, and I think it still has a value up until today. Walt Whitman, on the other hand, he's also, all the three of us are transcendentalists, which his major works was, of course, Leaves of Grass. And I would urge everybody, to read all these major works of these three mentioned people that I just mentioned, these three persons.
Yeah, especially Walden. That was also a description of how people could live together, right?
Yeah, it's a sort of a utopia.
Yeah,
how people could live in a nice way, and in a sort of in a way that it is in harmony with each other, and not in opposition to each other as it is today. So I think I would really look into it. And also I wanted to mention a work by Carl Stegman, which is available. You can check it on Amazon. It's called The Other America. And there he mentions a little bit about just this transcendental background, of the beings that are behind. He mentions Ahriman, of course. And of course, Stegmann was also an anthroposophist. That means connected with Rudolf Steiner. And he pointed out to a couple of these spiritual beings that rule, especially the geographical ether of North America, which you have to know. And the predominant spiritual being that shows its major force there is Ahriman. That has to do with the mountain ranges north and south, and certain electricity, the range of ether electricity, which is predominant on the North American continent. So I would urge people into looking into that one. But of course, it is always important when we talk about these negative things that we have the positive perspective, that we don't lose the courage, and that these evil forces cannot take us in and absorb us, but the good forces are also behind us and help us. And with our positive energies that we have, and which we have to generate, with our positive attitude, the good beings are there, and to help us, we only have to stretch a hand towards the spiritual worlds, and they will definitely help us.
Absolutely. And this is a very, very key issue, because we are always talking about all the problems and the issues and the severeness of the evil which is taking place on this earth. But there's a very, very good perspective, because in the end, and I hope you can confirm this, at least by your statements, that in the end the good forces will be victorious. Is that also your viewpoint?
It's up to us. It's up to us, in as much we are capable as a collective mankind to really consciously make a step forward in realizing these things and not being fooled by these negative forces. And if we are able to do that, and we have to make a step towards the transcendental. If we don't do it, then we are lost. I mean, that's very clear. So, but I think there is enough responsible people and matured people that know what is at stake. So they are actually, going in this direction.
Yeah, I'm confident. If you look around, I mean, there are many people waking up, trying to understand what they are into, what the materialistic world looks like, and many people have changed their attitudes. So I'm very positively thinking.
Well, because we know that these the cabal elite, they work with these forces, and for them it's everyday's business to deal with them. At least from the upper echelon, they are dealing with these forces and having their connection. So for us, on the other hand, it's important that we establish this connection with the good transcendental side, basically. So I mentioned always to study the works of Niccolo Machiavelli, the Prince, or the Il Principe, and I always also mentioned that the antipode of Machiavelli is Pico della Mirandola, that is Italian wise man. He lived during the same period in Tuscany, in Italy, about 20 kilometers apart. They were born, and he writes his philosophical works, has that positive touch, just in opposition to what Niccolo Machiavelli means, with the dominance, over people, and using the government and states to fulfill these cabal goals.
Right, and that's why they have changed everything into a corporate sort of state, because that is easier for them to control. I mean, as long as there is a people or a sovereign who controls the state, it is a lot more difficult to use the state against the majority of us. So that is how we can understand that everything has changed from a nation state to a corporate state, which is definitely not being talked about from the system side. But we have discovered this now since a few years. So that is another proof that they are trying to use these entities, these organizations against us.
Well, of course, the state originates from Plato. Platon. He is that Greek philosopher, and in his Politeia, he's written about the state, and in his way, it was actually a good aid for human beings to live together in an organized way. So his basic idea was not bad, actually. But to understand the overall principle, there is a basic concept, the pure concept, and then, like the worm in an apple, comes the infiltration by these negative forces, by this cabal elite. They go inside like a worm into the apple, produce more worms, and they take it over. And also secrets.
Yeah, using corruption or blackmailing or whatever. Isn't that right?
Yeah, exactly. So that is the basic principle. You can visualize it very easily. You just imagine a worm going inside the apple and then create a new haven for new worms, basically. That's what it is.
Right, and that's why we all have to avoid pyramidal structures. Because once you can take over the top of it, the top of the pyramid, then you are lost. So we have to avoid any pyramid scheme, if you want to, right?
Exactly. Well, but overall, I have to say that all these government structures, as they are today, you cannot cure them. You cannot, move them towards a better direction. You have to completely move out of them. So they're completely corrupt and rotten.
Right. The system basically is lost. The system failed. That's why I also said the states failed state, because everything is rotten. Everything is ruined. Right.
Exactly. So we have to look for into new models of living together in communities that are, ideally speaking, spiritually oriented, and based on ethical values, and start new communities. Live within a smaller set of communities, like they did in the Middle Ages, where they started new communities of like-minded people that organized themselves based on free will, because actually what is at stake is the free, independent individual, the self-ruled individual, which is at stake, and that is under constant attack, and that's the whole key issue. It's under constant attack by these cabal elite, because they want slaves. They don't want independently thinking and acting people that find out about good and evil for themselves. And that is the basic issue, that is key issue. And that's, everybody has to know this. So the whole cosmic battle, which takes back in the background, with all the spiritual being, the whole cupola of spiritual beings, that is the fight. That is the basic fight which Ahriman and his Zorath, the sun demon, and Lucifer and the Christ, and of course different Elohim and so forth are involved in.
Yeah, we all always have to understand that the whole education, the schooling and education system, which has been implemented since, I think, 1900 or so, is basically subject to indoctrination and enslavement, as you just said. I mean, it is meant to just not, develop an individual thinking, but rather a communist's fascist thinking, if you want to. Because if you are different than the others, then you are an outsider already, and you don't have a chance in the system. That's what they try to tell you, at least. That's my personal experience as well in my school times.
Yeah, and we have to look into what we actually think. Is it really myself that thinks, or does it think in me? And what thinks in me? So we have to be aware that all this is sort of, in a negative sense, it can be an incantation by these negative forces. And of course, they use the tools of the media to circulate these prefabricated junk food, so to speak, junk food thoughts that take us away from our own self. And all the occult and spiritual development, the higher development, the heightening of the consciousness is based that you think for yourself, that you know who you are in the first place, and that you know that you are connected to the whole cosmos of the universe in an arch of development, timeless, limitless, so that you have that big arch going back to the past, into the future, into the now, of course. And from here, we have to basically try to bring in this overall huge perspective that I just mentioned. And if we do that, we cannot go wrong.
Now, we are experiencing quite a few tyrannical measures by the system. They are not giving us enough, income in order to survive. It looks like, poverty and austerity and basically, hunger is already present here also in Europe. I mean, all the influxing migrants which are being pampered to come to Europe and who get lots of money from the system. They do have more income available than some of the basic inhabitants of the European countries, if you wish. Now this brings in a lot of conflict, and there may be revolts starting in Europe, and we can see this also starting in the US, where you just fight for your life. I mean, this is not yet really taking place, but it is forecasted to take place. Isn't that something where you can easily discover that the evil is taking down its mask? Because, you are being prosecuted for helping poor people. Can you imagine? I mean, this is not only in the US, it's also taking place in Europe. I mean, this is cruel. I mean, the cruelty is so obvious. Can't we see that the evil is there and is taking off its mask? What do you think?
Yeah, that is a definite process that takes place at the moment. We can see it the more they try to create this funny fake news story. They try to manipulate us through the media, through books, through education, but all their old apparatus is not working so good anymore as it used to, because in olden times they could tell us that bananas grow on the moon, and everybody would have believed it if the government would have approves it, So, but now through the alternative media, they have a difficult stand to use the old paradigms to rule the people. So they start to think for themselves, and in olden times, only as very high scholared people they could look behind the curtains. And now it is possible. There's a chance for everybody to look behind the different veils. I call it always the three veils of the curtain. As I talked, I think the last meeting, I said the first veil is that you see the secret. First comes the secret services, then comes the secret societies, and then comes the transcendental connection. So there is three veils which we have to look and to see what is actually the reality in all the phenomena that takes place.
Yeah. The first two veils are now being discovered and discussed deeply here in alternative media, new media. But the third one, with with the transcendental or spiritual veil, that is, many people don't believe that because they are so materialistically thinking, and that is a challenge for everybody of us to transport the idea.
Yeah, right. But it's a scheme, basically. Just think, if you were that negative force, if you were this negative force, you would say, like a thief in a department store, you would say, "Oh, I don't exist," and things simply disappear. You can put things there and replace them with other things. You're just cannot be seen by other people. Then you have an easy way to manipulate things. So basically, that was a plan of these higher evil beings to give the people the illusion that they don't exist. And that's part of the gimmick. And they planted it into everybody's head. Oh, the spiritual world does not exist. You only measure, cow, and weight. Weigh things. You measure, you count them, and you weigh them. That's all there is to it. And there's only science. And, people are being brainwashed in that direction because you see that transcendental spheres, they've been known through all of mankind's history. And when you think epochs of times, it was clear to everybody that spiritual beings exist. Only for the last 600 years, since about the 1400s, 1400s, it is being disputed over that even, I would say the last 200 years, actually, really since the establishment of the natural sciences, that it is being disputed that the transcendental spheres exist. So,
yeah. Well, now, the governments and all the whole system is working for those, let's say, evil forces. But it looks like, and you've mentioned this, they are in trouble. They are not really in control anymore of all the awakening people and the awakening individuals, if you wish to. Now, we discussed this the other day, and you said, well, maybe if the system isn't able to control the way the system is supposed to go, then maybe Satan or Ahriman, as you said, is forced to reincarnate himself to take over. Is that still up? Is that a possibility, or is this already taking place?
Well, I think it's the fate of mankind that Ahriman is incarnating. It's the karmic necessity, because Lucifer incarnated in the old Chinese times. Christ, of course, incarnated, and of course Ahriman also has to incarnate. So the question is only, does he incarnate earlier or later? That means when we are prepared, later is the better, because when we are prepared to handle him, basically, and you know who he is, we can sort of resist his activities to a certain extent, with the help of the positive spiritual beings. And but if he comes early and he takes us by surprise, then it is kind of an iffy situation. So,
is there a chance that I mean, it's always difficult to judge in which position we are, as we are not spiritual beings as such. We are still, in our 3D, form. But what is your point of view? How do you look at it? I mean, are we already there that he is in the incarnation process, or has he incarnated already? What is your point of view?
That's difficult. I mean, that's a very touchy subject, because you have to be really have to have a deep connection with the spiritual side to know all these things, because they're not out in the open. There is always activities, there is always tendencies, but I'm not the person that can tell you that's what's taking place or his incarnation is imminent. I cannot tell you that. Maybe there is some people that could do it, but it's such a touchy subject. There is a heavy responsibility to give any kind of a statement. So I wouldn't dare in telling that he's planning to incarnate, or he is incarnated, or he's soon going to incarnate. I wouldn't be able to tell it, and I would not take the responsibility to talk about it.
Sure. I understand that, but we've experienced this CERN in Geneva in Switzerland, and we've also experienced this festival opening of the tunnel underneath the Bern Alps. So are those preparating rituals? I mean, to me it looks like. I mean, which would say that he is definitely not yet there, but that they are wishing that Ahriman is coming. They are wishing for its appearance.
Yeah, I can see your point. I mean, what they're doing there is they even admitted out to the open that they try to find an answer by destruction. That is the principle behind it. And good spiritual beings don't need that. They don't need to destroy something to find out how it works. So that is a wrong approach. They have this evil approach towards things, to destroy and see how it works. That is a very negative approach. You can, in the other hand, you can see how something works through the living force, through meditation, or through the heightening of consciousness, that you open, sort of like a scholar, you go into the spirit world, like they did the whole process of initiation, which they human in all the epochs and times. There is a positive way to initiate some mature human being into the transcendental worlds, and you have to learn that language. It's like when you go to a different country, you have to if you want to understand French poetry, you have to first learn French. Same thing there. You have to really understand the language, and from then on you can try to find out what's going on. So it is I don't understand why a lot of people, especially religious people, claim they want to understand God without speaking its language. And his language is the transcendental, and you have to make yourself susceptible towards the transcendental, and that you don't do it through simply reading the Bible. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps a little bit to prepare for the basic emotional setup and for ethical concepts. For that, it helps. It's sort of like the kindergarten. But to go on further, it does not help at all.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, so that's it is. We always discuss this also in our German program, that we have to prepare for things to come. In any way. I mean, at least, as you said, they want to destroy our living circumstances. I mean, our living ability, by controlling the money system, the fiat money system, they have achieved that we are absolutely controllable if we are not independently preparing. So that is a pretty bad situation, actually, for our humankind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a materialistic part of it. On the other hand, I mean, they are taking away everything, that we can, um, be independent. They are trying to control everything. And, the spiritual point of view is not really being understood while you are suffering materialistic deviances, right?
Mm.
So that is
Yeah.
a very difficult point of view to bring forward to all those who haven't understood that yet or are struggling.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about behind the first veil, so to speak, it is clear when you look in today's world, the way it is organized, the forces by which it is run. Just it is obvious that something is fishy there, because the world is run by people that have the patent on creating money. Isn't it funny?
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
whole capitalism and all that, and it is obvious that there is no democracy. That democracy is a gimmick. It's a smokescreen. And people and a certain class and so-called evil elite, or an evil elite, is running this whole show here. And it's obvious that people that are a little bit wakey, they can find out. And just think about 6 billionaires that own as much money as the half of the human populace. That is ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah,
even
rather trillionaires, most probably. But
trillionaires. Yeah, excuse me.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, and it is so obvious. I mean, also that the media, which is supposed to be a fourth power to control those who are in power, are basically controlled by the power. So that is, it is absurd, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Michael, I tell you, it's a difficult world we're living in, a difficult task we have to master here.
Yeah, yeah, that's clear. I mean, in these evil circles, what they call the Illuminati, I call them the Tenebristi, they of course have dark intentions, and they wouldn't hesitate to. I mean, there are plans to kill a certain amount of the people like that, and as a role play, as a role model, they take the 30 Years' War, which took place from 1618 to 1648 in Germany.
Yeah.
So it's always important that you study history and
Yeah,
that you look in.
why don't you explain a little bit what this 30 years of war in Germany was about?
Well, it was basically the whole thing where it started is the Catholic Protestant division, which through Luther came about, and there was different there was the one part of the aristocracy was supporting the Catholics, and the other part was supporting the Protestant.
Right.
So that's basically where it started. I mean, that was how it broke out. But actually, what happened is the division that took place, the fierce fighting that took place, everything broke down. That the economy broke down. People were starving, and even there are some situations where they ate each other and where they ate their children. And this is where Hansel and Gretel, this whole fairy tale, came from. And
Because
maybe
of hunger, because they weren't able to find any food.
exactly. And so the daily life wasn't possible. I mean, you couldn't live. You had to run away, escape, or you had to be afraid always to be hit on the head, and it was an awful period of time. You could not read a book. You can forget it. It was impossible.
Yeah,
Unless you
that was part of my German first hour in the UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio-Marathon, that we have to prepare that things like that can happen again. If they force us into poverty and absolute dependence.
Yeah, that is the role model. So that's what they base their agenda, basically.
Yeah, that's why they want to control how we can live and not live. Yeah, and war, a permanent state of war, which is to be experienced since the First World War. It's in the last 100 years. It's the same thing. We are basically in a certain 100 years war issue already, isn't it? I mean, there are areas where you can live in peace still, but most of the world is in shambles.
Well, these people have no respect of life. They are worshippers of death, basically. So they have no respect for life or that life is holy, basically.
Yeah.
They don't. It's indisputable. I mean, that they don't respect. So, and without that basic premise, it is not possible to live in peace.
Yeah.
So we have that constant stirring up of these forces trying to disturb contemporary life. That's what they did throughout history.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that one thing about this Monte dei Paschi in Italy, that bank that is in difficulties. And there was this incident was that Davide Rossi, and he was the head of the Monte dei Paschi bank, and it is being said that he committed suicide. Actually, it is the typical suicides where people fall off fall off a building, so to speak,
or shoot themselves in the back of the head.
Exactly. So, his wife was actually telling in the Italian media that it's impossible that he committed suicide. So it was actually a murder, and that also fits into the plan of these people, and they do all kinds of. They have their all different methods of assassination and things that they do with people that get either too nosy or too dangerous for them. Then if they open their mouth, they get rid of them sometimes in this manner.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's really, it's unbelievable. I mean, if you think about it, how things are going on here in this world, you couldn't believe it, could you?
Yeah. I wanted to mention there's somebody who speaks Italian. He can look it up, this Davide Rossi event, the Monte dei Paschi in Siena. They can look it up in alternative media called BioBlue. That is BYOBLU.com. And there they can look into that incident.
Yeah. Well, that's a good hint. Yes. Well, we are slowly getting to the end of this part of our show. Maybe you can quickly summarize your findings and how people can contact you if they're interested to have a conversation with you.
Well, you can give the email address, which Wake News email address.
Yeah, that's Michael, as it is written, Michael at wakenews.net. So you can send him emails there, and he has his show every last Tuesday of a month in German, from 16 hours to 17 hours Central European time. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, just a last quick word to our audience, and then we will go into a break.
Yeah, as I said, we should be vigilant, we should be alert, and we have to actually get together and do some projects together. I think it doesn't matter that we only know these things. We have to change our lives in a way so that we reunite ourselves in an old sense, that we really have this, like in the Middle Ages, old friends, they would stick together. They would go into death for each other. They would have that human quality of real and true friendship. And if we have to recreate these qualities in our contemporary life with each other, the mutual trust that we have to establish, the mutual striving for a common good, for an ethical way of living together, and we have to form new communities to live together. We have to completely get out of the old system and start a new life that people say, okay, we are finished with this. It doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't make us happy. And the real self-fulfilling and the overall quest of the human being is that he develops on a onward spiritual heightening of the consciousness, that he is actually an active participant in God's in God's universe, in God's cosmos. And for that, he has to understand the spiritual role. And that's basically it.
Thanks a lot, Michael. We are now at the end of our show, and this is Detlev and Michael here from wakenews.net, Wake News Radio, Wake News TV from Switzerland in our UNITEDWESTRIKE the Radio-Marathon. We will be coming to the end, and we will pass on to our friends in the US, to Matt Navarro, just in a few minutes. And we're listening now to Neil Fox, F.K, The Fed. So thanks for listening, and stay tuned. It is going to be a great program right after. See you. Bye-bye.
Join UnitedWeStrike.com radio on the second Saturday of every month for our live international radio marathon. Don't buy, don't comply, ask why.